finish with this introduction, with this introduction to what will be, and I'm inviting Brad Andrians, which very kindly is going to share with us the methodology of Boyd as to decision making. And I think that it's better that I will shut up now and I'll let Brad lead us. Brad, thank you very much for joining. Please, the stage is yours.
Thank you very much, Maria. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, everyone. Good to see you. If I blink a lot, it's because my eyes are a bit tired. I've had a long day. Right, so what I'm going to talk about this evening is we're going to touch on understanding Boyd's work. So has anyone heard of Colonel John Boyd or the OODA loop, OODA? Has anyone heard that term or that framework or a methodology? No? Yes? Oh, hello, Stu. Thank you. Yes, Stuart has. We've had many conversations about Jones OODA loop. Thanks, John. Hey, Lynn. Thank you. Okay, so when I was thinking about how to cover this, Boyd's work is the combination of 40 years of his learning. So Colonel John Boyd was a US fighter pilot. He also taught fighter pilots at the Top Gun School. Yes, there is such a thing as the Top Gun School. It's not just a movie, where he taught air combat tactics and strategies to pilots. There was a nickname that they had for Colonel Boyd at the Top Gun School. It was called 42nd Boyd. He had a standing challenge that if any of the other pilots could shoot him out of the sky within 40 seconds, there was some reward that he would give them. In all his years as a Top Gun instructor, not one student was able to outgun him within 40 seconds. So it wasn't just about being a better pilot. So Boyd was an incredible person in terms of how he drew on multiple domains to develop this philosophy. So the visual that we're going to see in the presentation is the only visual representation of his philosophy. So something I really want us to remember as we go through this evening's brief session is that the image I'm going to show you is not the entirety of Boyd's philosophy. I have shared a document with Maria, and she is making it available to everyone. So it's definitely worth a read. So before we kick off, I want to put you all into breakout rooms. I should probably share my screen so you can see the presentation. I think that would help a lot. I was getting a bit excited about getting into the story. Just give me a second. Share screen. Here we go.
Until you share the screen, I will tell everyone that on our shared drive, in the resources folder, you can find the document, the research paper of Boyd that Brad was speaking about. Please, Brad, you may continue.
Thank you. Okay. Can everyone see the PowerPoint slide?
Yes, but we're not seeing it in show mode, but we're seeing it in
presentation mode. All right. Yeah, let me see. Let me get this to work. Close that. Okay.
Slideshow.
F5. Slideshow. There you go. Thank you. No, thank you. Not now. Slideshow. Come on. From beginning. Okay. Thank you. Thanks for the help. Thanks for sharing the knowledge. It's really lovely. Right. So to get the conversation started, we're going to get into our breakout rooms for a few minutes. And this slide is not.
Dear people, we will have today two sessions of breakout rooms with the same people. So be patient. Twice, once in the beginning, once in the end. So
yeah. So I think there's a bit of lag in the slide progressing, which is really annoying. So what we're going to cover tonight is connected to the slide is caught up. So I'm going to go back a second. So what is decision making all about? So this is the question that I'd like you in your small groups to chat about. So not how we make decisions specifically or different decision making models, but what is decision making? What is it all about? What does it entail? So I will pop you. Do I put people into the breakout rooms, or is there someone that does that? Breakout rooms. Right, just skip. Oh my word. Right, my PowerPoint will catch up eventually. I'll sort the breakout rooms out now.
Slovakya'ya gideceğim.
Okay.
Moria,
Creating.
your mic is off. We didn't hear you.
All right, so you guys can hop into a room. It is a, you can decide which room you want to join. Does everyone have that option?
If we click to the bottom breakout rooms, yes, we can. I see the option to choose one of 5 rooms.
All right, so just choose a number between 1 and 5 and hop in. So the question to discuss is, what is decision making all about? And we'll do 8 minutes and then come back into the main group. Fantastic. And I believe there's a Google Doc to pop your responses into. Thanks for sharing that. Lovely. All right.
Hey, Brad, it says the breakout rooms will close in 30 seconds.
Yeah, I know, that's weird.
Yeah,
Why is it-
I cannot check in any room. I don't have the option.
That is
Same here.
bizarre.
It
All
is.
right. Okay, I'm not driving this well, am I?
I was trying to go to room 3.
All right, let's go. Breakout rooms.
Try 2, 3, or 4, I guess. But yes, it is very slow.
Yeah, it is very slow. Oh my word. I don't know why it has like a 60-second timer on it.
Brad, please let me do it.
Thank you. Please
I'm
do it.
closing. I'm again closing the rooms. I'm sorry, guys. I'm closing the rooms. I'm sorry, Brad.
That's okay. Please take control, because I clearly have no idea what I'm
Okay.
doing with these breakout
I'm
rooms.
closing the room. It will take us a minute. I'll reopen it as we always do. We assign the people automatically to the rooms. Everything is fine. You just open the link. So you also will be part of the, you will see also the files. Please open the link. Now, we will take half a minute. It will close that back. I'm sorry. 34 seconds, 30 seconds, we have to wait. We will reclose the rooms. I will open them. I tried saying the door is muted out. I'm sorry. So I will reopen them in half a minute. We have half a minute to rest. Our activity, we all have on our slides part 1 and part 2. We will all do only part 1 now. We are only doing, I don't understand the breakout rooms. Did you reopen them, Brad?
No, I did not reopen them.
There's a problem here. Okay, I hope everything is okay, because it's all the time waiting. Okay, there are 2 parts in the breakout rooms. I will share my screen for a minute. You can, just a minute, I'll share my screen. Okay, everyone, you can see there are 2 breakout rooms here, part 1 and part 2 for each room. And we were going to go through part 1 only now, because we have 2 activities. Now I'm going back to the breakout rooms. Let's see if we can reassign them as we always do. Just a minute, please. Breakout rooms. Recreate. I'm creating them automatically. 6 breakout rooms. Yes. Now, I opened the rooms. Everyone, as usual, please go to the rooms. And if someone wants to be in another room, you can ask me to change. But everyone, please join your rooms. Sorry for the inconvenience. Brad? Hi. I don't want you.
Hi.
I don't want you to take your time. Please press the link. Do you see the link of the shared slides? I'll show it to you.
In the chat.
Look at the chat. Open the chat. You'll see
Yep.
on the right hand a link.
Yep.
Go into the link.
Got it.
You'll find in the link. You'll find all the. Open the link and share the screen with me, and I'll show it to you. What we see here.
Okay.
Great. Now we can move through the rooms and you can see what people are doing and writing.
Okay.
So
Fantastic.
that way, in the 4 minutes that still are here, or 3 or 4 minutes that we still have, you will be able to see what people are speaking about. So when we bring them back in, you can comment or you can make some comments on what you see here.
Yep. Brilliant. Thank you.
Okay, so take the time. So when they come in, you're already prepared because you see what they've already written, or at least a majority of it, and you can relate to it instead of just saying, okay, I've sent you and now you're coming back. So this is what you thought and this is what I think. So that way you can relate to some of the ideas that you see that they are writing here. And later on, when we will have another breakout room, I will send them back to these rooms, the same room. I will break them out. And therefore,
Thank you.
they will be writing on the same pages, the second part. So we have everything integrated, and you can even see on the top, you can see the people who are in each room now.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you. That's really helpful. Okay.
So even you can leave your screen shared. So therefore, when people come back, when I bring them back, you can decide if to go through the slides and say one sentence from here or one sentence from that, or you can say, I saw that ABC, and I'm taking it to what it is. Your call.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. I'm here to help you.
You're being really helpful with the breakout rooms. I don't know why I broke my brain, but there you go. So, sorry, Maria, you froze there for a second.
Is it okay now?
I can hear your audio. I'm not sure if it's on my end or if it's just the connection is not great at all. But it's just lag with
I took off my audio. I took off my video, so it will be better. I hope that's better now.
Yeah, I can hear you.
As long as I am the problem, it's no problem because you are the king today. And the
king for 50 minutes. Okay.
Okay.
Got it.
So I'm closing the room, so they will return in 1 minute, and they know the procedure. They are well prepared for that. And later on at the end, we will again give them between 5 to 8 minutes, depends how much time was left on the session.
Yeah. Thank you.
Hi, Michael.
Yeah, hi, Maria.
Michael is from India.
Hi, Michael.
Hi, nice to meet you, and lovely session. Just enjoying every bit of it.
Fantastic. Good to hear.
And Brad, you decide when to share your screen again, and if you want to do it in presentation mode, in show mode, or do it as usual, the way that is more convenient for you, and we will see your slides whenever you wish.
Okay, brilliant. Okay, I'll share my screen.
Yeah. So until everyone joins, you can see Manfred is from Austria, and I saw Elena from Bulgaria, and Lynn from the US, and John from and everyone is here back. Please continue.
Fantastic. Welcome back, everyone. I think we have finally resolved the breakout rooms issue, which unfortunately broke a bit of my brain, but I think it's all resolved now. So fantastic. All right, so I had a look through the responses in the Google Docs, and some of them are really fantastic and quite insightful. The one that stood out for me that I think is a good segue into talking a bit more about Boyd's OODA loop philosophy is that decision-making can be reactive or it can be reflective. So what we're going to cover in tonight's session with Boyd's OODA loop will be really helpful for the following sessions around critical thinking and strategic thinking and creativity, etc. So I'm just going to share my screen and hopefully there's no lag, which is great. Close that. So I just
see your screen yet, Brad.
Oh, okay.
Retry.
I'm having such terrible lag on my end. My deepest apologies, everyone. Hang on a second.
Thank you, Manfred, meantime, for addressing us to the Wikipedia.
Yes.
sense of Boyd. Here we see, now we can see.
Okay.
your screen. Yes.
Fantastic. The technology has caught up. Okay, let's try that again. Yeah, I'm just going to leave it in this mode because I'm having such
No
problems.
problem. Just make
with
it
presentation
bigger.
mode.
Just make it bigger,
will.
the percentage of the slide so we can see it, and you can leave it, yes, and show, take off the
Yes.
notes. So we see the full screen, okay?
Yes. Yeah. Yes. I'm
Lower
having,
exactly, great.
I'm just having some lag in my end. My apologies.
This is great.
All right, there we go. This is a bit better. Okay, so following the conversation around what is decision making all about, there are, if we think about it, there are different layers around decision making, right? There are decisions that we make that are quite easy and quite simple and straightforward. So, you know, what meals are we gonna cook, and what outfit are we gonna wear to work, or some really basic decisions around some explicit activities that need to happen in a project that we're working on. So those are fairly straightforward. I think particularly around Boyd's work, it's around developing a way of thinking and developing this muscle in being able to respond to events and circumstances that are outside of our control. And part of decision making, as we all understand, is that there are factors that we can control, that we can make decisions on and make choices about. And there are factors that are largely outside of our control. And for those of us who work in projects with multiple stakeholders, you will understand that often the success and the speed of the project is dependent on the decisions that are made by people who you have no influence or no control over, which is something that I'm experiencing at the moment on a complex project that I'm engaged in at work. So when I was thinking about how to frame what we're going to be talking about with Boyd's work, I was thinking about, well, what experiences, how can I talk about how I'm using Boyd's loop in navigating what can be, you know, complicated, layered, and sometimes messy relationships and decision-making personalities within the project. So one of the things that I'd really like to give you some background about is that, as I said, Boyd developed his philosophy, and it really is a philosophy around how we approach decision-making over 40 years. And one of the things that Boyd was really strong about is that we need to be prepared to deconstruct or get rid of or let go of mental models that are not suited to a situation that we find ourselves in. And often, you know, I think it was, you know, everyone says that Einstein said this thing that, you know, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing and expecting a different result. And I'm sure I'm just paraphrasing it. But often we find ourselves stuck in this loop where we need to make decisions with events that are unfolding and are quite complex and are quite messy, and we're finding it hard to make sense of it, right? And what we do is, when we face this uncertainty, is that we tend to rely on mental models or mental habits that we've used before, that we've used in the past, and that we have found reliable. Now, one of the reasons that Boyd was known as 40-second Boyd at the Top Gun Fighter School is that he was able to develop strategies and tactics literally on the fly as he was adapting to the actions of his opponent. So he always kept them in a reactive space because he was able to reflect and change and adapt a lot faster than what his opponent can do. Now, yes, there is a difference between military strategy and military tactics and making decisions in a war environment, as opposed to some of the work that we do. And sometimes the projects we work on can feel like a battlefield in terms of the things that we have to navigate. So one of the things that really stood out from the group work is that decisions can be reactive and reflective. What I want to share with you tonight is that it's possible, where even when we feel that there are things outside of our control, that we can take the time to reflect on and make informed decisions. And one of the starting points to this is to understand is to have a deeper understanding of how and why we make the decisions that we do, and also how we behave and how we react to having to make decisions in what can be stressful situations or situations where things are unknown or where there's uncertainty. So as I said, Boyd's, let me just move this down. This representation that we have in front of us, this visual, is the only image that Boyd ever drew of his philosophy. And it is a philosophy. It's not just a methodology that is linear that we follow. Now, if I take it to an individual level, if we think about our own experiences and our own backgrounds and the schools we went to, the families we grew up in, the countries we grew up in, we have these cultural traditions and these socializations that have shaped us, right? So where we went to school, what we studied at university, how we learned to do our jobs, and how we learned to master our professions, all of these things create these mental models that we use when we make decisions, right? And so a lot of these things we do on autopilot, it's subconscious. And sometimes we can get into a space where we're able to step back and to reflect on what would be the most useful mental model to apply to this situation to make the best decisions that we can. So the Orient component of this image is the one that's the most important one that I want to call out today. Because what we're doing is, if when we're driving, for example, or when we're taking public transport, our brain and our body is observing what's happening around us. When we're in a project meeting with stakeholders or with clients, we are watching the body language of the people that we are speaking with. We are looking for visual clues. We are looking for the things, we are trying to pick up on the things that are unsaid. And we are also trying to get a sense of what's going to happen next. What's the tone of this conversation? Where is this going to go? How will this impact on the decisions that I need to make? So this is what happens in the observation phase, right? We are taking in all this information, all the stimuli, and we are filtering it through these mental models that we have developed to help us make sense of the world and to help us, navigate things that we need to do in the workspace, which is where the Orient component comes in. Now, an important part of the Orient is our ability to not just analyze the events that are unfolding in front of us, but also to synthesize it. And that is to say, is to take through the analysis, we identify key components that are important for us to make a sound decision, and we synthesize it, we condense it into the best decision we can make at that time. Now, the other thing that's really important in this is that we also rely heavily on our previous experience and what has worked, particularly when we're faced with a difficult decision that needs to be made. If we're dealing with multiple stakeholders or a fairly complex project. And we can all understand, there are different pressures that we have within the projects that we work on. So the tricky thing is that there are some situations where the mental models that we rely on are useful and they are beneficial. And it's good to use them when we need to make fairly straightforward, explicit decisions. Where that falls over and it becomes unhelpful is when we are faced with a situation that is new to us, or we are faced with stakeholders that we have no experience with, and we have no reference point for that. So using Boyd's philosophy, one of his things is that we destroy or we dissolve old mental models that are not useful in that particular situation. And we formulate a new mental model to be able to deal with these unknown factors that have emerged. So when we're talking, the thing I want to really, and I'm trying to get our thinking around, is that the decision-making we're talking about is not just about the decision-making process, because there are a myriad of decision-making models and tools that we can use to do that. But it's really getting us to reflect on what is my behavior, what mental models do I use when faced with making decisions. The decide and the act components it forms part of that loop, right? So we observe what's happening. We use all these mental models and our experiences to make sense of what all the stimuli that we are seeing, and we make a decision to do something and we act on it. And then it loops back to we're observing what we did with our decision, and it gets fed back into the orange. And we're thinking, okay, now I've made this decision. What's unfolding before me? Is any of this making sense? Are there any questions at this point? Yes, no, maybe, no questions, no thoughts, no observations. Okay. I don't speak dog, but it sounds really interesting.
Yeah. Question.
Yes, question.
It's Paul here.
Hi, Paul.
I understand the slide and the different components of the OODA. I'm just trying to understand from a practical sense, has this been used widely within organizations? And are there any practical examples? I don't want to obviously preempt your next slides, but I'm wondering, can you maybe put this into a practical example where there's been some positive effect on the workplace by using this model?
Yes, I can. So the two examples I can think of. One, the first one is that the US military refers to Boyd's philosophy and his OODA loop a lot when they talk about the Gulf War, in that their planning and the strategies that they developed allowed them to move at speed and have overwhelming results during the Gulf War. Now, at a personal level, I found that I'm using this at a smaller scale at two levels. So the first level is, this project that I'm working on at the moment is around implementing a review that was done in the organization. And there are 14 recommendations to do that. And there are 4 working groups made up of between 15 and 20 people on each working group. And they all come from different parts of the business. Everyone is located in different parts of the business. Some of the people I know, some of them I don't know. And layered into this is a range of behaviors and mental models within the organization that is impacting on how people are making sense of the project. One of the things is that when you talk to some folk, they'll go, oh no, this is the 4th review we've done like this in the last 6 years. What's going to be different, right? How is this going to be different from what we've done before? Or we've done this before and it's been rolled out, and then after 2 years or after that program staff leave, the whole thing falls apart. It doesn't stick. So the implementation of review not sticking is a mental model that is stuck with people, and they're finding it difficult to see beyond that. One of the other things is that there's the reputation, right? So the reputation of this team that is implementing this project is that in some parts of the organization, the reputation of the team is not great. So when we talk about the project, the first mental model and filter they have is, what is my perception of the team? And my perception of the team, their perception of the team filters what they hear and how they engage with us in conversations. So what I'm finding is a lot of my work at the moment is particularly when I talk to senior staff, is to let them tell the story about the bad experiences or the things that haven't worked, because this is their mental model and their perception of what has happened before. And this is something they're bringing into this project as well. So how I'm starting to dissolve those old stuck on mental models, I used to talk about the honesty and transparency that is coming from the executive within this team, and the commitment that they have to make sure that this implementation sticks, and that one of the underlying themes of the implementation is to address systemic issues that have hindered previous implementations. So there's how I'm using the loop at the moment is at a personal level, is how I'm making sense of what's going on around me. What new mental models do I need to develop to engage important stakeholders and people that can influence and to other supporters of the project. And then also starting to slowly dissolve some of the unhelpful mental models that people have developed because of historic issues or historic errors or things that have happened that have stuck with them. Does that make sense, Paul?
Yeah, yes, it does. Thank you. I think it'd be particularly useful in, for example, a matrix organization where there's lots of different types of departments and activities going on at the same time. And if you can apply this model with each of them, it brings that level of consistency and getting to the end point. So yeah, but thanks for explaining that.
Yeah, and it's true. So the organization that are working is we have a head office and we have 1,500 different locations staffed by hundreds of people. So it is quite a complicated and complex organization to roll this project out in. So I think something that I'd like to highlight is that when we find ourselves in these particular projects or working with clients who have multiple locations in a country or around the world, is that applying the loop, it happens at a personal level for us in terms of how we are making sense of what's happening, and for us to understand our behaviors and what mental models are unhelpful and what we need to change to help us make better decisions. And then the other thing is, in terms of making our decisions, there's a connection to the people that we have to work with. So to engage them in the decisions that we are making, it's important that we start to help them develop a new mental model by the conversations that we have with them, to engage them in the projects. Because in multiple projects that I've worked on, one of the things where that becomes really difficult is that where people hold on to a position and go, no, my view is that this won't work because of X reason, or we've done this before and it hasn't worked, but no one listens, or no one has fixed this other issue, and now you want to do something new. So these are all the arguments we're encountering, and those arguments are rooted in a perception and a mental model of what is not working, what is broken. So how we're applying the loop within our project is saying, well, what different conversations do we need to have to start to develop a new mental model? How do we change some of those cultural traditions? How do we input new information to create new experiences that starts to minimize the old negative experiences? Any other questions or comments at this point?
Yeah, I have a quick one, please.
Yes.
What will be the best, let's say, repository to host this existing or new information? Because as knowledge managers, we need to support with tools or with something to those people to understand what the mental models. So what do you think can be a repository for that?
There can be multiple repositories for that. For the new, so if we, from a KM perspective, there's the tacit information and then there's explicit information, right? So a lot of what I've been talking about sits in the tacit space, where up here, this is where the repository is at the moment. In terms of new information can be translated into new processes, into new policies, into new systems, and that's when it becomes explicit. So that's when we can look at and decide with our project stakeholders what would be the most appropriate tools and assets that we can use to store and codify this new information. But I think there's almost two levels that I'd want us to think about this. One is at an innate behavioral and cognitive level in terms of how we make sense of what's going on and how we help other people shift their thinking and develop new mental models to be on board with the decisions that we want them to be a part of. And there are some, I want to talk about a few key principles that underpins Boy's philosophy. And again, this is 40 years worth of work, and this is just really an introduction just to shift our thinking and stretch our thinking a bit. Okay. So I've spoken about deconstructing and constructing new mental models. And to some degree, this can be really simple, right? There are there's lots of information out there how we can be more adaptable and more flexible in our thinking. Now, our thinking and the decisions we make is also rooted in our behavior, and being conscious of how behavior drives our decisions and drives our mental models, which is all part of that Orient component, is really important. Because the thing is, I'll give you an example, right? So if you are someone that when you're in stressful situations with aggressive or with argumentative stakeholders, are you someone that is fairly comfortable with that and you can adapt and adjust to that? Or do you find that it actually becomes quite stressful for you and you find it hard to engage with those kind of people or those kind of personalities and to make decisions? Right now, in the projects that we work in, we get all different types of personalities. When we talk about deconstructing and constructing new mental models, it's saying what is unhelpful for me right now and what is a new way that I can engage with the situation in front of me. Because the thing that, another way to think about this is that does anyone have kids or have nephews and nieces? Young kids, right? And they have a favorite toy. Right, so I've got 3 kids, they're all like in their teens now, but when they were toddlers, they'd have favorite toys. And when you try and kind of, transition them off that toy, they were very reluctant to do that, right? They get angry, they throw tantrums, they don't want to let go of that thing. What we're talking about here is for ourselves and helping our stakeholders and our partners that we work with to let go of mental models and ways of thinking that are unhelpful to the outcomes that we want to achieve. One of the biggest blocks we find to projects is people being stuck in a way of thinking from their previous experience. Again, this has never worked because we've done this before and it doesn't work. Or this system is broken. How is this, what you're going to do, going to fix that? All right. So it's always the objections that come up first about why something won't work. And that in itself is a mental model. So for those of us who are working in almost project facilitator roles or working with clients, part of our role is to help dissolve that unhelpful mental model. So we need to find a language and a way of communicating with them that helps them to shift their thinking. Now, for us to do that, we need to shift our thinking, and we need to have a portfolio of techniques and knowledge and experience that we can draw on to help us develop these new mental models. So one of the important things around making effective decisions is to constantly be learning, which is why we're here, right? We're here to learn new information, to learn from each other, and to develop new mental models about how we approach knowledge management, right? So knowledge management is an infinite loop between discovering new knowledge, applying that knowledge into learning, which then generates new knowledge, right? And that's an infinite loop that goes round and round and round and round, which is the basis for making sound, effective decisions at a personal level, as well as at a work level in the people that we work with. So if we are able to deconstruct mental models that are unhelpful in a particular situation, we become able to demonstrate that for the people. And it was interesting, I had a conversation with a senior manager just yesterday, and it is a very similar trend where he said, he's been in the organization for 30 years. He's been involved with this particular team. He's worked in the space, and he listed, numerous experiences of when things haven't worked and when they failed. And now this has affected the reputation and the standing of this team throughout the broader organization. And I heard him out. I said, I understand. I've heard some of the stories. I've had some of the experiences. But what I also want to offer is that we have a leadership team that is committed to honesty and transparency, right? And we know we have this window to make this stick and to change systemic issues that have not worked. And there was a pause, and he thought about that. And there was a shift in his energy, and he was like, right, okay, I understand what you're saying, right? So that's the start of dissolving that reputational mental model that he had about this particular team and this particular function. And that then scales that, so that gets laid with many different conversations. So when it comes to making decisions around advancing the project or eliciting his help in supporting a particular initiative, I know that he'll listen, and that there may be a point that I can rely on his support when it's needed. So when I'm talking about deconstructing and building new mental models. This is a practical example of what I'm talking about. Right, so I'm going to move us on to the next one. So models of reality must be refined and adapted in the face of new observation. So I'm going to go back to this slide here. So observing is watching and making sense of what's happening around us in our external world, right? Reality shifts and changes by the events that unfold, by the people that come into a particular context, or people, new people who come into a project, and there are things happening in their world and in their work life that impacts how they behave and engage with you on the project that you're working on, right? So something we need to be aware of is that we are constantly in the space of refining and adapting what we perceive as unfolding and what's real in front of us, right? And one of Boyd's favorite domains to draw his work from was from quantum mechanics and physics, right? And one of his things was that you never have complete information, right? So this is links into, you know, the uncertainty principle, that the more you know about something, the less you know about something else. So this is why it's really important that we don't rely on the mental models that have worked for us in the past when we find ourselves in new circumstances. We need to be constantly adapting to the new observations that we are making sense of that's coming into us in the projects or in the client work that we are engaged in. And at some level, we do this subconsciously, and it's really, really straightforward. And for other things, we have to be more conscious of it and work harder at it. And the way to do that is to always be exploring new areas of learning and new areas of knowledge. And the thing is, because as professionals in knowledge management, there can be a tendency to focus on our area of specialization, our area of interest within KM, or we may just look at, you know, a domain in learning and development, or a domain in service design, you know, because it's comfortable. Part of, you know, part of forming new mental models and having access to information and knowledge to help us develop new mental models is to look into areas that are uncomfortable and new for us and stretches our thinking. This is a key component. If our learning is flexible and we are prepared to take on stuff we don't know, it makes it that much easier for us to be more comfortable in deconstructing mental models that don't suit us and developing new ones. I mean, I come from a background in learning and development, and over the last few years, that has shifted into learning and development and knowledge management. And then L&D, knowledge management, service design, which is design thinking. And then that's now shifted into systems thinking and a bit of complexity. So I now describe myself as a Swiss Army knife. So I have change management and project management thrown into the mix as well. So I don't see myself as purely as a KMer. I'm very comfortable straddling multiple domains. And this is a key component of Boyd's philosophy. Don't get stuck in one domain and let that be the doctrine for how you engage with the work, because that limits our effectiveness in making sound decisions for the projects that we work on. Which brings me to this slide. You know, if all we ever have is a hammer, everything is a nail. Right? We need to have a toolbox that is more like a Swiss Army knife, which is why it's essential to strengthen our fluid decision-making muscle, that we intentionally explore different domains and try and learn from different things as much as possible to stretch us and keep us in that little bit of an uncomfortable space. Okay, so moving on to the next breakout session, and Maria has very kindly offered to manage that.
Look, we have 5 minutes left. So decide.
Oh, we have 5 minutes
left.
Okay.
You didn't see how the time flew out. So we can try, maybe we discuss here in the room. I think it would be better than sending them back again, because we won't have time until we separate and come back together. It will be a bit in a rush. So
thank you for that. Thank you for the 5-minute warning. So I think it's a great idea that we stay here. And any questions or any comments or any clarifications, I'd love for people to throw that out.
Maybe we ask people if people can stand up now and unmute themselves and suggest how they are going to implement the OODA loop. That's what we want to do in the rooms. So now that's what we're asking here. How do you think you can implement this? how can you implement this OODA loop? And if it's challenging, why is it challenging? So maybe we can all think about it together. Who wants to?
Yeah.
Maybe John, who's familiar with it already, or someone who is already familiar with the Stuart, or someone who's already familiar with the ideas will give us the courage to all join in.
Sure.
Yeah. Go for it, John.
So with the OODA loop, the biggest thing to do is there's a great book on Hamburger Hill. They were not allowed to observe what the enemy was doing, orient on them, decide and act, and that's why the problem happened. Instead of taking the hill, they needed to control the valley. So by looking on lessons that are failures will help us also decide when we need to make a decision, left, right, forward, or just stay put. But we do need to be able to make those decisions to act upon.
I see the questions and I'll respond to them after the comments from some of the other members. Thanks, John.
Okay, so maybe we'll address the questions. We have 3 minutes, so decide.
Okay.
Stuart maybe first, but then we'll address the questions.
Yeah, you mentioned how I'm going to use it. I'm dealing with a bunch of firefighters who have a very particular way of thinking about problems, and it works awesome when you stand in front of a burning building. Doesn't work so good when you apply it to a $2 million 6-year project. And so I've been really challenged tonight. I think I'm going to focus more on the reorient with these guys rather than on the decision making, which I have so far, and bring them back to that, you know, you want to go higher, so you want to pull back on the stick. I totally understand, but what if your plane's upside down? You know, and so how do you orientate yourselves and get them thinking about that? So thanks for the encouragement, Brad. I appreciate it.
Thanks for that, Steve. So Manfred, I'm not that familiar with Sengi's open system theory, but my senses are based on my understanding of systems thinking based on the work of Russ Akoff, is that it's a good fit, it's a natural fit for it. So Boyd's, okay, so here's something I want to throw out, right? We need to think, we need to consider that Boyd's philosophy is not a mechanism. Okay, it's a way of learning, it's a way of us adapting, it's a way of us embracing being fluid in the way that we think and the way that we learn. That's the basis of it. Okay. The other, so when it comes to systems thinking, there's a really good fit in terms of how to apply the OODA loop philosophy in how we make sense of and navigate systems. Because there are causal loops within systems, right? There are inputs and outputs, and there are slacks and tensions. Now, the slacks and tensions can be driven by different things. It could be driven by relationships or external factors. I mean, COVID is a classic example, right? We've had this external event happen that has literally unseated a lot of systems that are around us, from family to work to national economies to state economies, and how we make sense of the world, etc. Right? So that's just something I just want to throw out there. And then how do we reconcile it with Agile? Is Agile still relevant? Is that still a thing? I'm joking. So I don't mean to offend anyone. So
I think that brings us to an end.
Does it bring us to an end? Okay, I'd love to continue that conversation around Agile and
So
OODA.
please, people, if you have any different questions, please pass them in, and we'll pass them, of course, to Brad, or we'll add
Yes.
Brad if he wants, if there are questions, to our chat. You can join our WhatsApp chat, and I think there was only an opening to the idea that decision-making using the philosophy of Boyd can take us to a more precise, more effective way of being active on our decisions-making, even though the consequences and situation changes and does not wait for us. We can act as if it was our idea and be leaders tomorrow more than yesterday.
Yeah, thank you. And this, I think one of the other things I want to throw in closing is that there are constraints that we have to work and live within, right? I'll give you a quick example. So in Victoria, in Melbourne, for the better part of 2 years, we had a 5-kilometer bubble that we couldn't go out of because of COVID lockdown. So our world reoriented to what can we do within that 5 kilometers. So I'll give you an example. An example of this is I love cycling. There's a road that is 3 kilometers long around the corner from me. So I would do laps up and down this road for an hour. And that was within my 5-kilometer bubble. So I had to adapt, right? So rather than go, I can't cycle anymore because I can't go more than 5Ks. So what can I do within the constraints that I have, and how do I refine and adapt to my reality? Okay, so this is not just about a mechanistic approach to making a decision. It's about fundamentally how do we evolve and adapt ourselves from our learning to be better at making decisions and engaging others to shift to our way of thinking. Thank you very much. Thank you for your time, everyone. And again, my apologies for the breakout room fiasco. It was really good to see everyone.
Yes. We will all take our biases, understand the mindset, we understand the 5 components, and deconstruct, construct, and make better decisions. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.